He's gonna land as a right-wing authoritarian, I'm absolutely sure of it. Making the same test at the roughly same time. We start from the beginning so you can see why he's gonna land as a right-wing authoritarian.
There's this very popular test online. It's called the political compass test. And basically, it scans on two separate axes. From left to right on the x-axis, it shows communism and collectivism to neoliberalism and libertarianism on the right. And then on the y-axis, it goes authoritarian fascism down to anarchism and libertarianism. We'll see how accurate it is. If the scale is correct in any way, I will end up in the right libertarian category. I mean, that's obviously where I am. I think the premises of the questions are incredibly stupid. So let's just jump right in. Question number one. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. Did Bernie Sanders write this question? What a stupid ass question, seriously. Like transnational corporations, which are responsible through the use of free market capitalism for the dramatic decrease of poverty throughout humanity, are now opposed to humanity? So the very phraseology of the question is idiotic. But since they're asking this, I'm just going to assume that their premise is wrong and put strongly disagree, because transnational corporations have been a lot more helpful to humanity than top-down government-induced schemes. Okay, I'd always support my country whether it was right or wrong. I disagree with that. I disagree with that, because what if your country is terrible? No one chooses his or her country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. And I generally agree that it's silly to be proud of just where you were born. You should be proud of the country because the country actually doesn't
You
suck.
should be proud of
Race has
everything.
many superior qualities compared with other races. Strongly disagree, because I don't think that races matter in terms of inherent quality. That's
Idiot.
silliness. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I disagree with that. And the enemy of my enemy could also be my enemy. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Strongly agree. International law is a bunch of crap written by countries that generally have their own priorities. The UN Security Council includes Russia and China. So yeah, I'm going to go with strongly disagree, or strongly agree on we can sometimes defy the idiocy of international law, which is an idiotic construct in the first place. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. Disagree. Disagree. The reason I say disagree is because there was always that fusion. We just ignored it until the last 5 minutes when everybody got mad because conservatives were suddenly creating news. Okay, the economy. People are ultimately divided more by class than nationality. Strongly disagree, and World War I proved that that's a bunch of nonsense. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. I agree with that, because you can't actually control unemployment. You can only provide the principles necessary in order for an economy to flourish. The only way to control unemployment directly would be through top-down government control, and you could have a horrible economy with complete employment. That was called the USSR or Cuba or Venezuela until the last 5 minutes. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Well, I mean, I generally agree, but I wouldn't single out corporations there. Obviously, when it comes to environmental regulations, you do require environmental regulations. You have the tragedy of the commons. You have the ability to regulate externalities. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. Strongly disagree, because need should not dictate either moral worth or the morality of the thing that you need. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. Strongly disagree. Why is that? Why is that bad? I'm confused. I mean, you can still get it from the tap. Like, seriously, like, if you don't like the bottled water, just don't drink the bottled water. It seems pretty fantastic that you can go to the store and buy basically whatever you want. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Strongly disagree, because what would the alternative be? That it would be all government owned and allocated by the government? It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. Again, the premise of that question is so ridiculous. A lot of the time when people suggest that people are just manipulating money, what they are actually doing is mitigating risk and assessing risk and providing capital and liquidity markets that allow you to go out and spend on your company, on your business, or allow you to have a credit card, for example. So I'm going to go with disagree.
The bad Jews again.
Maybe strongly disagree. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. Agree, but only for national security reasons. So maybe disagree? Maybe I'll put disagree, because it's generally not necessary in trade. It's only necessary for national security reasons. It's not necessary for economic reasons. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Agree. I mean, agree.
Strongly agree. Strongly agree.
To its shareholders, and that has a bunch of ancillary benefits. It's not designed for employment. It's not designed for distribution. The rich are too highly taxed. strongly agree. And by the way, I agreed with this when I was making 50, 60 grand a year. Of course, the rich are too highly taxed. On a net basis, the rich are paying for nearly everything taxation. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. Well, again, the phraseology of the question is so ass backwards because, again, the question isn't whether those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. The question is whether
should there be doctors who work for money?
A system that allows people to pay for better medical care also allows people who are poor to get better medical care. Meaning that when rich people pay more for medical care, where do you think that money goes? It goes into the medical system and is then reinvested in drug development, reinvested in medical innovation. So the answer is agree.
I'll show you my answers to these questions. Previous page. If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interest of transnational corporations. Generally agree. In that transnational corporations aren't humans, no matter how much you pretend that they are, and they are closer to artificial intelligences or perhaps animals in that they are not human. We need to figure out how to give them voting rights and how to emancipate them into a system as with every other minority that we have ever come across in the West. We need to emancipate them, and we need to emancipate them somehow. I don't know how, but we need to do it. So primarily this process of emancipation of these corporations should serve humans, but it should also serve the corporations. If we emancipate them by, in essence, sterilizing them or removing their testicles, if you will, then we are doing wrong. We need to approach these transnational corporations as aliens. They are literally an alien concept to us as humans. They are as alien as the first democracies are the first kingdoms. It is that alien. We need to serve both sides or we'll lose. That's my point. Next one. I'd always support my country whether it was right or wrong. Strongly disagree. Anytime you think your country is wrong, you have a ethical obligation to oppose them with everything in your disposal. That is what the Second World War taught us. That if we don't oppose our governments when they do the small evils, we encourage the commission of large evils. It may be just one guy, one police officer, and one knee, but it is enough to fuck us all up forever. So we cannot allow it. We have to oppose our governments when they do evil. That is the very nature of life. That is how the cosmic vajayjay gets its resistance and tightness from us normal common people opposing the things. To put it in a medical context, if we don't oppose it when something wrong happens to us, we won't gain benefit of pleasure when something good happens to us. If we don't make a choice internally to do the right thing when the right thing appears to us, then the right thing when it appears to others in relation to us won't happen because the others won't do it either. We have to show our light and do our own best thing and hope that others will eventually follow us and do their own best thing, and that is democracy. That when you ask your wife or your neighbor or your husband for opinion on what you should do, you are also encouraging others to do the same if you succeed. And democracy has shown that it succeeds, that it works. Fascism works for military purposes when you are under a military threat and you need to move quickly. Fascism works. But in anything except the worst disasters where you have to move quickly, democracy works, always. And anytime you go to fascism, you have to literally cleanse yourself with the whipping of the whip to get yourself back to understand that the opinions of others are always better than your own opinion, because there are billions of people on this planet and they have gone through everything that you can ever imagine happening, and they know they have gone through it before. So, in short, oppose your government when it does wrong, because that is how we prevent World War III. Then the next one. No one chooses his or her country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. Well, in a way. in a way. It's foolish to be proud of something you have no control over, but shouldn't you feel proud that you look happy or that you look good? Shouldn't you be proud that you are healthy? These are things you have no real control over, but you still take pride in them. The way I see it, you should take pride in everything that happens to you, regardless of what you think about it. You should take pride in the fact that something is happening to you, that you are not in the vacuum of nothingness and nothing ever happens to you, and you are like an untouchable singular being of God, forever alone, forever touching nothing, just like floating in the nothingness. So yeah, you should be proud of anything that happens to you. Is it good or is it bad? Depends on where you are emotionally, and when you switch your emotions, the thing will switch. When you feel as Germany bad that you were the Axis powers, you don't take into account the fact that all your friends got together and told you that it was a bad idea and you survived. You survived. You were drunk on power and you were picking a fight with a guy who's like 7'5" and weighs 400 pounds, and your friends came to you and watched you to the ground and said, "This is a bad idea, take a break." And decades later, you still feel bad about it. That's not what they intended. It was a night out drinking. You have to admit that bad shit happened and they helped you, but that's about the size of it. So, in short, be proud of it. No matter what you are, always be proud of it. And the next one. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Absolutely. Absolutely. Every species, race, variant, life form, everything is superior to every other life form because it exists. If it didn't exist, it would be inferior. Everybody who exists, every race, animal, life form, star, everything that exists is superior to everything else in that it exists in that thing. No other life form has chosen to exist in that specific thing. You are the first, and as far as I know about the universe, the only one who has existed in that thing, and that makes you superior. It's not about blacks being better runners and whites being better at surviving in the sauna. It's about everyone having a superiority over everyone else, and it's called life. Life makes you superior. Everyone you meet is superior to you in some way. And the moment you forget that is the moment you become a racist. Everyone is superior to everyone else in some way. Our generation grew up watching Star Trek. We learned about the other races. We learned about the other communities. We talked with them. We watched them. We knew how different people react, and we learned about it. This is not racism. This is valuing other people. For me, as a spirit guide kind of person, the person who does the spiritual thing, one of my strongest guides ever has been Worf. Worf from Star Trek. He was one of my strongest by far guides, and I have had an absolutely amazing time with him studying the spirit. He is an absolutely amazing guide. And I realized that he is superior to me in any number of ways. He is a better actor. He's probably calmer to his friends. He's probably a better person when it comes to trouble, and so on and so on and so on. But I'm better at going to the sauna because I grew up with a sauna and I like a sauna. He could win if we just actually had a competition about who's better in the sauna. Perhaps if we had a competition about who's better at Star Trek, I would win, but that doesn't matter. What matters is he has his own superiority. I have my own superiority, and we acknowledge each other. We are both in our own worlds, and we both acknowledge that world exists. I hope that makes sense. The next one, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. This was a hard one. Well, the Soviets attacked us, the Germans sent us help, asked us to turn over the Jews. We didn't, we sent them 5 criminals, and we let the rest join our army, so they're untouchable by the Germans because they're officers and shit like that. It's a confusing time. But should we have become enemies with Germans when they offered us help against the Soviet Union when we were during our Winter War. On the other hand, during the Winter War, the Germans blocked the weapon shipments from Italy to Finland that were going through Germany. So, did Germany actually help us? I don't know. Seems like they used this. So, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Perhaps. I would say it's a very close 50-50, but if I really had to pick and I was at war with someone, I would probably start to seek out their enemies to see if any of them can help me. So at least like in theory, yeah, you might want to seek allies against your enemy, especially in your enemy's enemies, but you may not want to assume that they're your allies. They could be like the world-eating demons, and your enemy happens to be fighting them for, control over your soul, so they wouldn't eat it. Yeah, that's, keep an open mind. And then this one, military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Absolutely disagree. Absolutely disagree. Absolutely disagree. The very definition of justification is international law. That's the very definition of justification. We are not individual nations, we are a human spirit. If we don't follow international law, we cannot say it's legally justified until we form a new international law and have it pardon our previous crimes. But for the duration of being against international law, you are by its very definition unjustified. But if you win, you create a new state, and that new state has a new international law, then you can get a pardon, and then you can consider that you were in the right. But you have to accept that the moment you fight against international law, you're wrong. Period. No matter what the law is, you're wrong. Period. If you are willing to go into the darkness of the soul, surrender to the darkness, if you will, and let it guide you, then eventually you may find a situation where military action against international law is justified, in the hopes that in that darkness you will find a better state that will result because of this action. Yeah, you can do that. You can do that. You can think that the next, like what Germany did with the League of Nations. You can think that the next law system will be so much better that you're legally obligated to overthrow your system and so on and so forth, but that's not really what the law says. The law says you're allowed to overthrow your regional government, and even the United Nations, you're legally allowed to overthrow that. But if you do it in a justified manner where you wage war on the United Nations according to the international laws that the United Nations has set up, then you're not really doing anything against international law. International law in military action is usually that you have to be in self-defense and that you can't target civilians. That's basically it. Everything else gets excused. People who use explosive ammo, even though it's banned. People with no legal access to submarines build submarines and stuff like that. But generally speaking, there is no justification for breaking international law and committing war crimes, generally speaking. And I will defend that particular viewpoint with the idea of strongly disagree. You are not prevented by international law from overthrowing the United Nations. I'll leave it at that. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. Strongly disagree. Information is entertainment. We all create our worlds around us based on what we believe to be true. Our ability to objectively evaluate information is pretty much nil. That is because the human mind and the human psyche is not capable of processing information. It's capable of processing theory. And from those disparate theories, we work towards a better system. But if you look backwards in time, you will see that every generation thought that their system was the best and they were wrong. And the reality is that life life is entertainment, and getting information into that entertainment and vice versa is absolutely critical. The moment when anybody watching the news can hire a drone to like follow soldiers around and report on your own and like make like movies about new events like I'm doing and such, and like making information entertainment and vice versa, that is the very core of where we must go. We must make our decision making completely and absolutely aware of the fact that it is entertainment, that life is entertainment. We don't know for sure what it is, and we never will. I'm an agnostic in that manner. We will never ever procure information about what we actually experienced. We have theories. We will never prove that we even existed. We just are. So yeah, no, I'm not worried about information and entertainment being mixed. The next one, people are ultimately divided more by class than nationality. I answered like a half ton of these, but I forgot how I answered them, so yeah, whatever. People are ultimately divided more by class than nationality. Disagree. The poor British football hooligan is more connected with the rich British football hooligan than the French poor football hooligan, so I will say disagree. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. Strongly disagree. Strongly disagree. That is because inflation is a fairly irrelevant point to getting to the 3% unemployment goal because of how much it actually costs us to have unemployed people. But yeah, that's what I think. Thank you, Greenland, for saying so. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulations. Strongly agree. A corporation should have as its sole defining principle to look at all the laws that exist and make money. It should not be obligated to do anything besides make money. If it decides to do something else, nice, but it should be obligated to only make money. So from that point of view, we need the others than the corporation to make sure that they don't break the environment, the same way that with private people you should be seeking for your own happiness, surrounded by things which make sure that you don't cause more unhappiness to yourself by harming others and causing their karma to come for you. So in other words, yeah, we require regulations, strong regulations to protect the environment. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. And yeah, on paper. In theory, if you tax the rich more, the poor less, and you give to the poor social subsidies and you give the rich less social subsidies, you will end up in a place where everybody is a little bit better off than if you just have like a cutthroat capitalist competition where everybody just basically survives or dies, or like gets rich or dies. Survives or dies isn't that life? Well, dies or dies is life. So yeah, in theory it's a good idea. Like with every simple statement or claim or similar, you're gonna find points where it doesn't work, but on paper you should give the people who aren't capable of working some breaks. And the people who are capable of working should perhaps be considering giving perhaps an hour a day of their entire work income to something, but I digress, that's not really the point. I wouldn't strongly agree because it's a statement that seems to be one of those like liberté, égalité, fraternité, which has a lot of French Revolution in it. The freer the market, the freer the people. Strongly agree. The most obvious indicator of a society's freeness is how freely they distribute and trade in things which they disagree with, and or with people they disagree with. The more you stop the trade of things or stop the trade to people, the more unfree you are. There is, in my view, in fact, only one like real indicator of whether or not a government is on your side, and that is if you can trade. The moment the government starts compressing down on your trade, they are essentially becoming the enemy. Everyone, in theory, according to the United Nations, should be allowed to trade in everything everywhere. It's not going to work like that, and they're not going to write it down like that, but that is the theory, that as long as it's your body, you're allowed to do whatever you want with it, and nobody can tell you otherwise. That is what we learned from the Second World War. So yeah, very strongly agree. I would even click here. It is a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now bottled and branded a consumer product. Strongly disagree. It's a good thing that we're able to sell water in bottles. It's also a good thing we're able to sell crack cocaine in little pouches. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Strongly disagree. The Indians, the Native Americans, showed us that without a concept of land ownership, you're pretty much fucked. When somebody comes over who has a concept of land ownership, they're gonna buy it and you're gonna be fucked. So basically, yeah, strongly disagree. We need to educate everybody in the concept of owning land and owning things so that the pillaging capitalists don't get through. It has to be a coordinated, slow effort to transform the planet into what I did in the Faith model, which is first do every green reform, then make everybody capitalist. It is regrettable that many people's fortunes are made by people who it is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to the society. Strongly disagree. It is sad that people think that you can get something without contributing to the society. That such a thing exists, that there is such a thing without its personal thing, like I said earlier. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. Absolutely. Absolutely. You need to check when you trade that you're not giving away your last cow, that you're not giving away your last bushel of food, that you're not fucking yourself over by doing a stupid trade. That kind of protectionism of your interests when you trade, instead of getting the short-term benefit, getting the protectionist long-term benefit is absolutely vital. You have to make sure you have a stockpile of everything you need and only trade the extra. Just my view though. Most people would like to trade what they have, what others have, and what they can loan from the bank, and then hope that they get rich, and if they don't, ask for a bailout. The only social responsibility of a company should be to deliver a profit to its shareholders. Responsibility. Responsibility. Something that you have to do. Yes, absolutely. Now, whether or not companies want to do something else, whether or not they want to be good to people and they want to build houses and they want to build hospitals and so on, we need to encourage that, so that every company gets an idea of you have to do something back to the community, or when they look at what you're doing with the money, they'll go like, you're stealing from us, that we need to do. We need to get the idea that companies understand that their primary point is to make money, but if they destroy their reputation by being douches to the people of the planet, you're gonna have a bad time. So yeah, its only actual obligation should be to deliver a profit. Now, what it wants to do on top of that is how it makes that profit. Does it have a good reputation? Does it have a bad reputation? Is it like a disaster capitalist? Is it like, what is it, if you will? The rich are too highly taxed. Disagree. In fact, strongly disagree. Currently, the standards of taxation on the super rich are very low. They are very low. You could really tax the rich a lot more than you can tax the poor right now. In fact, you could go so far as to say that the rich are in fact taxed almost nothing compared to how much they make. But that once again is just my opinion. Those with the ability to pay should have access to higher standards of medical care. This is a good one. Are you saying we need an absolutely uniform medical system without the ability to pay for a doctor that you are thinking is better than the doctors that the government assigns to you? In fact, I would say I strongly agree. Everyone needs access to medical care, but I don't want to live in a system where literally having money makes sure that you can't buy anything with that money. And if you can't buy medical care, then you really can't buy anything in the system. So, in my view, yeah, the rich should have access to better medical care simply because they can pay for better medical care. That's the way it works. Medical care cannot be made uniform across the entire planet because we just don't have the resources. It's impossible. Government should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Agree. In theory, lying should be punished in theory. But how we go about doing this, and if it only affects the AIs or if it affects the humans as well, is debatable. So yeah, there should be some form of punishment generally for bad actions, regardless of whether or not they're lies or cheats or murders. But we can talk about whether or not we need an actual police force to do that, or do we need some form of social ostracization for companies that have been caught in lies, for example, or do we need like a government mandated response? I don't know. It's in between there. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predatory multinationals to create monopolies. This is a good one. This is a good one. Well, I'm gonna go with agree, because if there are no restrictions on corporations, then there is a source to power without restrictions on it, and other forms of power will be eliminated by the one power with no restrictions on it. So, the way I see it, every path to power needs restrictions, and the only realistic way to control multinationals as a corporation is to have multinationals as a country. So, yeah. See the rest of the answers.
But again, like you can tell who wrote these questions. I mean, these questions are obviously written by people who are very much of the political left. Governments should penalize businesses that mislead the public. Agree, but it depends on what you mean by mislead the public. Obviously, you don't actually have to have the government penalize those businesses. That's fraud. I mean, if they defraud somebody, you can have a tort suit on that basis. A genuine free market requires restrictions on the ability of predator multinationals to create monopolies. I'm going to say disagree only in the sense that a natural monopoly is nearly impossible. It is very difficult to establish a natural monopoly. The typical way that monopolies are generated is because governments have approved them, is because governments have sponsored the monopolies. The freer the market, the freer the people. Strongly agree. Okay, next page. Abortion, when the woman's life is not threatened, should always be illegal.
You can already see what he's gonna answer. So, no, abortions should be legal until the baby is at its first moment of being viable outside the womb. Until it is, if it is only viable inside the womb, then it should be illegal to abort because it is considered a parasite. If it is able to survive outside the womb, then abortion should be illegal, and the only thing you can do is have a premature birth and adoption immediately. But abortion up until I believe it is early first trimester, like 21st week or something. I don't know how long the ability to hold a baby alive when it is premature is, how late or early it has to be. but only illegal when the baby has reached the age where it can be kept alive artificially, and at that point, induced birth is the only abortion option you have. Before that, abortion should be legal completely because it is tantamount to a parasite because it can't live outside of yourself. When it can live outside of yourself, abortion should be illegal completely. All authority should be questioned. Strongly agree. There is no authority without questioning authority. Authority comes from finding with your questions that it is a good authority. An eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. This is a good one. In theory, in theory, but more applicable to the idea of having the exact same punishment is having roughly the same outcome after the punishment. That is somewhat more important. So that, say that two people are fighting, and one of them is really big, strong guy, and he like wails on this little guy, and the little guy gets really bruised badly. And just as this big guy is getting up and walking away, he has a heart attack. He doesn't die, but he has a heart attack. And the doctors say that the heart attack was because he was punching that guy, so he got it because he was being violent. So in that case, does the heart attack warrant the karma in that it lessens the punishment that the beater up gets, or does it become a stronger punishment because, well, or is it the same punishment? So if you can see that justice has been done, that the person who abused you is now basically the poorest person on the planet, are you still like legally allowed to take punishment, or should punishment be tied to the standard of living so that when the standard of living has been lowered, the punishment has already been done, so that you can, in essence, avoid state punishment by lowering your standard of living? So that if you do wrong and in essence voluntarily imprison yourself, are you able to avoid state punishment? It's a complex question, so an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, in theory, but not in practice, so I would go with kinda agree, but also kinda disagree. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Strongly disagree. Strongly disagree. Art should be supported so that when a new form of art appears, they should always have some facilities publicly paid to see what the art is doing and what the art is like, because we want to be kept aware of it. We want to be kept in the loop. We want to know what their memes are, if you will. So taxpayers should fund the minimum culture for every form of culture, but they should not be asked to fund essentially two same museums next to each other. That is not what it's for. But making sure that every form of art has some form of representation inside the society is something that I would agree with. It doesn't mean having a museum for everything, but at the very least have like a museum that shows new art forms and such. The idea of only commercially viable art is a little bad. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Schools should not be compulsory. All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep their own kind. Strongly disagree. Uh, as a species, we will gain more by interacting with other species, as we will by rather than isolating ourselves, regardless of what the species is. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. Strongly disagree. Do not inflict violence upon the children and pretend that it's a good idea. It is natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. Agree. It is natural for people to keep secrets from each other. Possession of marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Absolutely. The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. Now you ask the toughie. Now you ask the toughie. No. The prime purpose of schooling should in general be school itself. It shouldn't be anything outside of school that school prepares you for, and least of all finding a job. School should prepare you for things like paying the taxes, how to find a job, but that shouldn't be the primary, how to do art, how to read, write, math, how to learn more stuff than you have learned from school, uh, general outlines of history, sciences, and so on and so on. But prime function of finding a job, no, that is vocational training. People with serious inheritable diseases should not be allowed to reproduce. Not even gonna comment on that one. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. Absolutely not. There are no savage and civilized people, there are only different cultures. Strongly agree. And I'm not even gonna comment on the Mayan sacrifices while we still have death penalty or animal farming. I know you're gonna hate that, but I'm not gonna comment on it. Those who are able to work and refuse opportunity should not be expected society support. Strongly disagree. That's like saying if you smoke tobacco, you should have your own bills for your cancer treatment, or like in Finland when this mountaineer went into a mountain in like I think Russia and got lost somewhere and had to be airlifted back to Finland, and it cost us 2 million. They really wanted her to pay the entire thing, and I was like, come on, because she went there of her own volition. Why should we help her? And I think you've all heard this and know why it's a bad idea. You are responsible for your own health, but we have socialism. When you are troubled, it's better to not think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. Strongly disagree. When you are troubled, the emotions need to be expressed and you need to feel troubled. Otherwise, you're gonna miss why you were feeling troubled. When you do understand why you were feeling troubled, you'll feel better. Guarantee it. First generation immigrants can never be fully integrated with their new country. Strongly disagree. What about Abraham Lincoln? Or, sorry, George Washington. He was an immigrant. He didn't live in America. He lived in the British. What's good for the most successful corporation is always ultimately good for all of us. Oh, no. No broadcasting institution, however independent its contents, should receive public funding. Uh, 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 no independent broadcasting thing should ever receive funding from a government, but there absolutely needs to be a government funded news channel in every country, so we can separate what the government propaganda is from the rest, so that we know that the government thinks like this, and this is its argument, and here are the private guys. And the government funded infrastructure needs to be strong enough to get to people and have most of them agree with it. If it doesn't get most of them to agree with it, the government needs to check why it's being not liked by the people and redo the whole thing. But independent, no, don't get money from the government, but every government and country needs a state-run information service. It's like a church in every medieval village. You need one. And I don't think I really need to explain why every town needs a church in the medieval time. Nope. Let's go check what El Shapiro said. El Shapiro. He's gonna say strongly agree, and he's gonna be a right-wing authoritarian. I can already tell. I hate to be a racist.
Agree. All authority should be questioned.
I hate to be the Axis guy here. I hate this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I love when a self-marking libertarian Jew does one of these studies on what they call other people and how they are doing their thing, but does it to themselves, and they turn out to be a right-wing authoritarian. I love this because they keep saying everybody else is a right-wing authoritarian, starting with the Axis Germans. So when this side happens, I am absolutely enamored with it. I love seeing this guy get a right-wing authoritarian. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's gonna get a right-wing authoritarian. I hope I get a slightly left-leaning, very libertarian. I think I could be right-leaning. I don't know.
Agree. I mean, I think that we should always ask the basis for the authority. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. What? One of the great misnomers in all of biblical history is the notion that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth is meant to be taken literally. There's entire swaths of the Talmud dedicated to discussing the fact that this is meant in terms of monetary pricing, that the cost of an eye should be repaid by compensatory damages. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, disagree. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theaters or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Agree. By the way, that doesn't mean you can't have a nonprofit. Most museums are run on a nonprofit basis. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Agree. But they should make it that parents are truant if they do not pass certain educational standards for their children for the welfare of kids. But suggesting that we're going to force you to send your kid to a public school as opposed to homeschooling, that's why the question is a little bit vague. Like, what kind of classroom attendance? Are we talking homeschooling or are we talking public schooling? All people have their rights, but it is better for all of us that different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. Again, the way this is phrased is so ridiculous. Well, what does that mean? Different sorts of people should keep to their own kind. Like, I think that people should marry people who have similar values, but I don't know if by kind they mean ethnicity or race, in which case completely disagree. So it completely depends on what they mean by the question. There's inherent vagary to these questions. And I understand that these questions are designed to elicit responses that are quote-unquote racist, so they can label you conservative for being racist. I understand that's what they're doing here, but the questions are deliberately written in vague fashion to elicit those responses. So knowing what they want, I'm going to go strongly disagree. Good parents sometimes have to spank their children. I generally disagree with that. I'm not in favor of spanking, and I don't spank my kids. It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents. I mean, I agree that it is natural. It is also wrong as a general matter. So I don't know what they're going for there. I'll say agree on whether it's natural, but I like that the survey immediately seems to identify natural with morally correct, which of course is silly. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense. Agree? The prime function of schooling should be to equip the future generation to find jobs. Strongly agree. I think moral education is generally the preserve of the parents. People with serious inheritable disability should not be allowed to reproduce. Strongly disagree. I don't know we're calling it the Woodrow Wilson eugenicist there. The most important thing for children to learn is to accept discipline. Obviously, disagree. It's an important thing for kids to accept discipline because they don't know things because they're kids. It is not the most important thing for children. The most important thing for children is to be taken seriously and develop actual rational modes of thought. There are no savage and civilized people. There are only different cultures. Well, again, the way this is phrased is ridiculous. By saying peoples, what they are now implying is that if you say that there is an uncivilized culture, that you are labeling a people, meaning an ethnicity or a race. So the very phraseology of the question is asinine. But if we rephrase the question, this is the question I'll answer, so now it's clear. There are no savage and civilized cultures. There are only different cultures. Strongly disagree. Obviously, that's not true. There are some cultures that suck. And if you don't believe me, check out the Taliban. Those who are able to work and refuse
Fuck you, man.
should not expect society's support. Strongly agree. When you are troubled, it's better not to think about it, but to keep busy with more cheerful things. Generally agree. It's better. I mean, wallowing in things is not usually a great solution. First-generation immigrants can never be fully integrated within their new country. Disagree. What's good for the most successful corporations is always ultimately good for all of us. Disagree, because many successful corporations are looking for government handouts or bailouts. No broadcasting institution, however independent its content, should receive public funding. Strongly agree. Our civil liberties are...
Man! I watch this guy's stuff sometimes, but holy hell. Check out the Taliban. What, you mean us guys farming in the Middle Ages? Where one of us punched one of you, and you invaded our country for 15, 20 years? Instead of, like, policing and finding the guys who did it. You overturned our government, invaded, bombed, then bombed another country, then bombed 2 more countries, And you think we're the savages? Now, what do you think would have happened if we did like a terrorist attack on the US every 3 months and killed like 100,000 people in a year, every year, for 20 years? Then you could call us savages. We punched you once. Once. When that happened. Sure, the little speedboat. That was what, 15 years ago when that happened. You gotta keep your perspective in mind. Our civil liberties are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. A significant advantage of one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. Yeah, kinda. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried now. You've never seen an AI. The death penalty should be an option for most serious crimes. In a civilized society, one must always have people above. The reason death penalty should never be an option is that there is a technical possibility that the state is wrong. We should not execute the dissidents even if they're criminals. We should just put them in prison for the rest of their life in case the system is overturned and the next government is in power and, bad becomes right and up becomes down. We shouldn't penalize the next generation by destroying this generation's bad ones, if you will. We should preferably lock them away. Kind of a fantasy fan in this that we lock away the demons instead of actually like going on a hunt and killing them all. In a civilized society, one must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded. No. Direct democracy. Abstract art doesn't represent anything and shouldn't be considered art at all. Strongly disagree. Anything is art if you say it's art. I don't personally like most of the abstract art, but I like a lot of things. In criminal justice, punishment should be more important than rehabilitation. Absolutely not. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. Strongly agree. The business person and the manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist. Strongly disagree. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Also strongly disagree. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. Yes. Unethically? Yeah, it's unethical, but is it illegal? And why isn't it illegal if it's unethical? And that is because we don't have the laws yet in place to understand all the concepts of unethicality as illegality. That's because we're a developing society. We will eventually have a law system where unethicality is exactly the same as illegality, but that will not be for this generation, and it will not be for thousands of generations, as far as I'm concerned, hopefully, because the one that gets it right will probably be the last generation. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. No. Actually, making war on the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Children are at peace with their parents, and that's the way it should be. As they grow, they get into conflict with their parents slowly. First over things like bedtimes and naps and food and so on, and eventually about things like being able to go outside, being able to have girlfriends or boyfriends, and so on and so forth. Perhaps the most important aspect of maturity is making war. That is a distinctly adult attribute. Getting together with people who agree with you and making a push with the acceptance of laws in a self-defensive manner as a last resort to fight against injustice. That is basically the very core of maturity. Would you say that the Soviet Union was immature for fighting the Axis? Or were they mature for fighting the Axis? I will make another example. If maturity brings peace, and childlikeness brings war, then why aren't children better at fighting against people who take advantage of them while adults are good at fighting against people who take advantage of them? The reason why in the most developed world adult and children relationships aren't allowed is because the child can't fight. The child cannot show through combat what they want. They don't have the energy to withstand the necessary combat of being in that situation. It's not because they aren't nice enough or they aren't friendly enough or so on and so forth. It's because they aren't violent enough. They aren't able to have the necessary level of violence that the adult world needs. Because when you are with someone, everyone else of the same association as the person you are with will be competing with the person you are with for your love. And a child cannot fight back. That is the definition of a child. So when you grow up, you develop the ability to fight with your parents to get your spouse to replace your parents. That is the most important part of growing up. To get your parents to back away enough that you can get a spouse. That is the most important part of growing up. It has nothing to do with being nicer when you grow up. Children are the nicest thing in the universe. Adults are evil. No, we need to give up more liberties. Oh, why did I end up as an axis?
Are being excessively curbed in the name of counterterrorism. In the United States, I'm going to go slightly disagree, but I'm kind of torn on this one. I'm like between agree and disagree, honestly. A significant advantage of a one-party state is that it avoids all the arguments that delay progress in a democratic political system. Strongly disagree. One-party states are garbage. Although the electronic age makes official surveillance easier, only wrongdoers need to be worried. Disagree. The death penalty should be an option for the most serious crimes. Strongly agree. One must always have people above to be obeyed and people below to be commanded.
Strongly agree.
Abstract art that doesn't represent anything shouldn't be considered art at all. Agree. I mean, like, if you give me a blank canvas and tell me that it's art, you're an idiot. And justice should be more important than rehabilitation. Agree. Although there is a third purpose to criminal justice, which is not punishment and not rehabilitation. It's also keeping criminals off the streets. It is a waste of time to try to rehabilitate some criminals. Strongly agree. Obviously, there are recidivism rates that are extremely high. The business person and manufacturer are more important than the writer and the artist.
Psychopath.
Disagree. Many times the writer and the artist are the font of ideas, but, you know, the market decides all of that.
Well, actually, I disagree with myself again.
It's less important, and anybody who tries to on one end or the other end is doing the wrong thing. Mothers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers. Notice they don't ask the question about fathers, by the way. They only ask the question about mothers. I'm going to say agree, but only because I think that if there were a question that said fathers may have careers, but their first duty is to be homemakers, I would also say agree. Meaning that my first duty is to be a father and to be a husband. Okay, my second duty is to have a job in support of that. So I'm only going to say agree because I hold the exact same thing for men. I understand, again, these questions are designed to...
No,
if you're in favor of women...
Your first job is not to be a homemaker, for the love of God. For the love of God, what are you, an animal? My first job is to breed, herdy-her-her. I must get my Winky into something for genetic imperative, herdy-her-her. No, that is not your first job. Dear Mother of God, if all the people who thought that they are obligated to have a family didn't have a family, this would be such a better planet. This would be an unbelievably better planet. If the people who thought that children sometimes appear in your life, they're a curse and a burden, and you must kind of like tolerate them until they grow up and leave, if these people stopped breeding now, the world would be a much better place. Much better place. No, your first job is not to breed. First job is to be yourself and enjoy life.
Who have children putting their children first, it's because you're a sexist. But as I say, if the question were about fathers, I would give exactly the same answer. Multinational companies are unethically exploiting the plant genetic resources of developing countries. Oh, GMOs? No, disagree. Making peace with the establishment is an important aspect of maturity. Disagree.
Huh.
Depends what the establishment is. Okay, this is about religion, I guess.
I'm gonna, if this still works, which I hope it does. There we go. Disagree. Everybody can, in theory, be rehabilitated. Whether or not it actually is worth the effort is another matter. But in theory, we should aim to have everybody rehabilitated and back into society as a good member and such. But sometimes people just don't want to be good, and trying to convert them to being good is basically a waste of time. But in theory, yeah, everybody needs to be at least, tempted. Astrology accurately explains many things. Yeah, like the people's actions who believe in astrology. If you have a friend who believes in astrology and you know what kind of publication they read, then does not you reading that same astrology publication just for information about how your friend is going to think that their day is going to go, isn't that like accurate information? If your friend says that they will obey the Bible literally, and you say the Bible isn't an accurate source of information on anything, are you not saying that it's not going to be accurate on how your friend acts because it's incorrect in terms of scientific accuracy about God? Are you saying that if your friend says that they'll follow Harry Potter and they start dressing like Harry Potter, that you say Harry Potter is never right about anything? That's not really like the point of it, is it? It's that your friend follows Harry Potter, and by reading Harry Potter, you're going to know more about your friend. So the people who follow astrology, the point isn't whether or not the astrology book itself is accurate. The point is that they're going to follow it like it's accurate. And if you want more accurate information about how their day is going to be, then you got to read that same publication to know how they're going to think about their day. It's a hassle, I know, but you read science. They read astrology, and both sides need to compromise. You cannot be moral without being religious. Strongly disagree. Not even gonna bother. Charity is better than social security as means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. No. Charity doesn't work as a social security network. Some people are naturally unlucky. Oh yeah. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. No, 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 no. No, no, no. No, 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 no. School plus instill plus value is always wrong. Only value that school should instill is math.
You cannot be moral without being religious. Disagree. I don't think you can build a fully moral system based on objective morality on pure subjectivism, but you can certainly be moral without being religious. Charity is better than social security as a means of helping the genuinely disadvantaged. Agree? Some people are naturally unlucky. I don't know what that means. I mean, obviously, some people are born with certain disadvantages, so obviously that's true. If you mean, do I think that there are certain people who are just destined to walk into manhole covers, then no. Do I think everybody is born with an equal level of privilege and luckiness? No, so I guess I'll say I agree. It is important that my child's school instills religious values. Strongly agree. Sex outside marriage
Is usually immoral. No. A same-sex couple in a stable loving relationship would not be excluded from possibility of child adoption. Yeah. Have you ever been to a foster facility, to a child's like school home? Have you ever like talked with somebody who was in the kind of foster where you have 50 kids in the same room for 15 years? Have you like ever been to Southeast Asia? I would love having every child that is disadvantaged or in a bad foster care or a bad parentage situation to be adopted by a lesbian or straight couple, lesbian or gay couple. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for adult population. Yeah, you think? What goes on in the private bedroom between consulting adults is no business of the state. Now you're asking a good one. Uh, I'm gonna assume that the bedroom doesn't hold a chemical warfare laboratory and they're only talking about sex itself. In that fashion, sex between consenting adults should basically be legal all the way to like cannibalism. But having a chemical warfare development set in your bedroom is definitely a business of the state. So I'm gonna assume that they mean consenting adults can't cannibalize each other, and in that case, I'm gonna go with strongly agree in that they can cannibalize each other. In my opinion, people can do whatever the fuck they want with each other when they're an adult. That is the very definition of an adult. No one can feel naturally homosexual. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. We're not even getting there. We're not even close. I'll let you know when sexuality has gone too far.
Marriage is usually immoral. Strongly agree. A same-sex couple in a stable, loving relationship should not be excluded from the possibility of child adoption.
Strongly disagree.
So the answer is agree, but it depends on the alternative. I have a sort of hierarchy in terms of talking about a stable, loving, heterosexual couple versus a stable, loving, same-sex couple. I'll take the heterosexual couple because I don't think that mothers and fathers play the same role. If you're talking about a stable, loving, same-sex couple versus an orphanage where kids are being ignored, then obviously I think that same-sex couples should be able to adopt. Pornography depicting consenting adults should be legal for the adult population. It depends who is doing the regulation. So my general answer is disagree. I don't think that it should be legal, but I think that it's very difficult to draw regulation that is not too heavy-handed in this area. I don't think you have a right to pornography, though. I don't think there's an inherent right to pornography. What goes on in a private bedroom between consenting adults is no business of the state. Strongly agree. No one can feel naturally homosexual. Strongly disagree. And again, all these questions are designed to elicit particular responses. So the idea is that if you're religious and if you're conservative, then watch, it's going to list me as a libertarian. You'll see. You can believe that homosexual activity is sinful on a biblical or religious level and still believe that people have natural desires to do things that are biblically sinful. I mean, that happens all the time. These days, openness about sex has gone too far. Strongly agree, and if you disagree, it's because I'm not sure you're a sentient human. The only question here that I'm kind of torn on is the pornography question, and that's only because it's a question of gradation. I'm really wavering between disagree and agree on the legality for the adult population, because, again, is it harming third parties? Generally, no. I guess I'll say agree on should be legal for the adult population. I don't know. I'm really torn on this. On a moral level, obviously, I think pornography is one of the great evils in our society. On a legal level, do I think that the government has the capacity to regulate it? If you're talking federally, no. Locally, yes. But I think that's true of a lot of things. So they don't actually make clear where the illegality is coming from. All right, let's see where I stand. It says that I am right libertarian, right, which is true. It says that I'm 6.13 on the economic right, and on the libertarian versus authoritarian.
I'm as close to the left-right paradigm as he is to the authority liberalism paradigm, but I'm so much more libertarian than he is. He is center-right. He is not a libertarian.
Score, I am slightly more libertarian. I'm negative 0.72 on that score. So that would put me closer to like Milton Friedman territory. The scale itself is really stupid. The reason the scale itself is really stupid is because I'm looking at the examples that they give. They put Hitler and Thatcher in the same category. They say that they are authoritarian right. Adolf Hitler and Margaret Thatcher, which makes no sense and is full-scale idiotic. they have Stalin in the left authoritarian category, and they have Hitler in the right authoritarian category, and Thatcher in the right authoritarian category. Like, this whole scale is off. I mean, I went through the questions. You can see that all the questions are designed to elicit particular responses. I just don't think that this is a particularly accurate score. I think the outcome of where I am on the scale is fairly accurate. Although I would say that I'm kind of shocked that they don't place me as more libertarian, like based on.
Wow. So Mr. Center Right, who thought they were libertarian, I ended roughly where I thought I'd end up. Left wing liberal
On what would be the question. But there you have it.
or
I've
center
gone through this
liberal.
thing at great length with you, and hope you enjoy.
Yeah. Guy wants to ban pornography to consenting adults and pretends that he's liberal. Come on, man. Come on. Fucking with me. Oh, porn has gone too far and my kiba is rolling on its head. Porn. Oh. Nice. Nah, come on, man. Just no more Shapiro from me. Guy is clearly gone off his deep end. I'm a libertarian. Sure, 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 sure. What's your opinion on porn? Not legal for adults. Hi. Hi. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is. Let me sniff your hair. Sniffity sniff sniff. Them spiders. There are only two genders. Sure. You're gonna have a fun time when we run into the aliens. Nothing ever gets older than people saying something is impossible. Thought we'd learned by now that there is no such thing as impossible in the universe. Thought we'd learned that by now. Oh, I don't believe in white privilege. I've actually lived as a white guy. Can you imagine what Michelle Obama said in reverse? And the minorities are running away from us. Run, savages! Run, homie! We're coming for you. Can you imagine that option? Sure, sure. Yeah. Run, homie. No, the US didn't invent slavery. It's been around for as long as civilization has been around. And it'll probably continue to be, but who knows about the future? Hmm. I don't think there doesn't seem to be anything else relating to this to watch. The sexual revolution is only just beginning, and I can guarantee you it's gonna get 10 times worse before it gets better. Guarantee you we've been holding a lot of minorities under a lot of very hard rules, so when it actually does break, it's gonna be an epic flood. Epic. Epic. Eventually somebody is gonna ask the question of why are we allied with Portugal, Estonia, Southeast Asia, and Iceland if we prosecute these people in our own country? Eventually somebody's gonna ask that very uncomfortable question. Because for the US currently, that particular group is the Mexicans. For us, it's the Icelanders, which is a bit different. When it's the people doing better than you, being more liberal than you, there's a certain impetus to being more liberal. When it's the people doing worse off than you, who have gang wars and shit, and they're more liberal than you, then it's easy to say that their liberalism is causing their downfall. But when it's the other way around, that the richest groups who, generally speaking, manage to do well are the ones that are more liberal than us, for example, like Japan, then it's a little bit more difficult to say that it's the liberalism causing the downfall. It's gonna be quite an epic show. Quite an epic show. Mm-hmm. Yes, you need to pay their salary so that they wouldn't listen to you when you say you pay their salary. So, the I pay your salary argument only works when you don't have an argument with them. In that you can choose to not pay their salary by moving. So yeah, I think this is about it. This was me commenting on Ben Shapiro's assumption that they are libertarian, they're not the center right, and doing the same test as he did, and I got center libertarian or left wing libertarian, as I knew I was gonna get. So yeah, he wanted to for example, ban porn between consenting adults and such. So not surprised that he got the hard one. So yeah, that's about it. Bye.